Well, a renewed push this morning to expand the GST, according to modelling done for the Productivity Commission. It'll do the least economic harm. Joining us live is the Chief Investment Officer at the Motley, Scott Phillips. GST, we're back here again and expanding it potentially, but is it electorally palatable?
Pete, probably not. Good morning. And by the way, when we say expanding it, it's an independent analysis done for the Productivity Commission. In other words, the polls have pushed this as far away from claiming responsibility as they possibly could. It wasn't me, it wasn't them, it was those people that employed those people that employed those people.
Yeah,
but independent economists do the work.
It should have been looked at, though. I mean, is it right? I mean, I've spoken to so many economists, not just yourself, but others have said this is by far and away the best option, right?
Yes. It is. For the very reason that a consumption tax was introduced in the first place, It makes perfect sense. Look, now, I want to be really clear, mate. I think we should help the people who are going to be hurt by this. You can't put costs up by whatever percent for welfare recipients, low-income earners, and simply have them absorb it. They can't absorb that, right? So plenty of people say, no GST because it hurts the worst, the lowest paid. That's absolutely true. So let's help those people and do a GST.
Yeah,
you don't
because
have to just
that's
do one
the thing.
or the other.
That's the thing, isn't it? So I've in the past, and particularly when John Howard was trying to push this through, yes, it was going to hurt those at the lower end, but there needs to be something else to help them to offset, right? To make them feel like to make everyone feel like they're getting a win.
Yeah, and make them whole. You know, again, I don't reckon people on welfare or low-income earners should be paying more GST so that I can have not pay more tax myself, right? So I'm very, very happy with that. The simple reality is the carve-out the Democrats got was for ostensibly decent reasons. That is, you want to prioritise building fresh food over processed. I get all the ideas and all the arguments. What it's meant, though, is we've pretty much handicapped it. It also probably needs to be a higher rate. And here's the thing. That is true in and of itself. But the analysis released this morning pretty much says not only is it a good idea in and of itself, it's also the least damaging. In other words, it's the best. If you're going to have a tax, it's the best one to have. If you're going to increase revenue, it's the best way to do it because it causes least economic harm. So not only am I saying it's good because it's good in its own right as a better tax, but if you're going to try and, if you are going to raise more revenue, and by the way, plenty of people yelling at the screens now saying, no, just cut spending, and that's also a conversation we should have. But if you're going to rejig the tax base, if you do need more revenue, if you are going to offset things like personal income tax or company tax with a higher GST, with those offsets and make goods, then it makes perfect sense. And the analysis says the same thing.
All right, well, Dan Molino, he joins us on a Tuesday morning. We'll be sure to ask him about that a little later on. Scott, just finally before we go here, there's an interesting story that jumped out at me yesterday. I want to talk to you about it today. It's the fact that most economists are now baking in a rate cut when the RBA meets next, but not just one, possibly a number of them before the year's out. But now comes talk that the RBA might not be looking at rapid-fire rate cuts, maybe just 1, 2 at the most.
Yeah, well, I think we know they're kind of cooling their jets a little bit, right? By the way, the confidence that people have this time around, they had last time around when they said the RBA was going to cut and it didn't. That's why,
but it
I don't make prediction rate, and that's exactly why. Well, here's the problem is you've got an inflation rate that is low enough to justify some cuts. So that's the positive. A couple of things. Firstly, we know the inflation rate is going to go up in the next 6 months, almost certainly, because of the 4 quarters that we add together to make the current yearly inflation. When we move forward 1 quarter, you drop off a previous quarter, right? So you go forward 1 quarter at a time. The 2 first quarters of this current year were 0.2 and 0.2% inflation each. Now, it's very, very, very unlikely we get a quarterly rate that low next time. So what happens? You drop off a 0.2, you might add a 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. So the annual rate will increase even in that scenario. So it's going to go up. That's the first thing. Second concern, frankly, mate, is we know there's probably going to be inflation in the US on the back of tariffs. I don't think anyone's suggesting it's not going to happen. People are arguing about whether it should or whether it's okay, but it's almost certainly going to happen. If and when it does, that is going to have global ramifications. We know inflation kicked off in the US way back in 2020. We know what happened there. So the RBA is going to be saying, look, we want to reduce borrowing rates. Of course they do. Yes, we've got some room to do it, so we will, and they probably will cut when they meet next in a couple of weeks' time. I don't know for sure whether they will, but let's say they do. When do they go again? How long do they wait? What do they look at in terms of local and economic pressures from overseas and make that decision?
Watch that space. Scott, thank you.